Well, the November election is just 2 weeks away, with the candidates on both sides of the aisle saying the direction of the country is on the ballot. Most of the conversations today involve the presidential race, but perhaps it's the local elections where Americans will see the result of their votes. So, here to help us better understand what Republicans are doing on the state level is Edith Jorge-Tuñón, a political director at the Republican State Leadership Committee. So, Edith, I want to play an explainer video from the RSLC laying out its mission this election cycle and then get your input on the other side. Let's take a quick look.
Margins are tight, and the math is jarring. As few as 42 state legislative seats could determine as much as a 136-seat swing in the United States House of Representatives. If Democrats win, they'll have the power they need to transform America into the socialist utopia they've been fighting for.
The RSLC is leading the fight to stop them.
This year will be a battle like we've never seen before. In our dozen redistricting target states, there are at least 115 Democrats who currently hold office in a district Donald Trump won in 2016.
So those are fascinating numbers right there that really show you how important these local and state elections could be, not only for people who live there, but on a national level as well. So what is the RSLC focusing on before November 3rd?
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me on, and you're absolutely right. I think, we all know how important this election cycle is, and so we at the RSLC, our main priority is ensuring that everyone that's going to cast their vote this November, as early as today, as early as several weeks ago, they're really focusing on that entire ballot. Obviously, the sexy race is always at the top, and the federal ones tend to take up a lot of the oxygen in the room, but at the end of the day, nothing's going to determine the state of your state like the local legislative races and what's happening at the statewide level. And that's our focus this cycle and every cycle.
And I think that's very well put because, some people feel a little bit of a disconnect sometimes when we talk about Washington, D.C. and what goes on there. But, you can turn on your local news every night and see exactly what's happening in your home neck of the woods, whatever it may be. So that really does slam that point home. And I know that your organization recently released an ad that was focusing on a local race in Georgia, a place that many political analysts are calling a toss-up state going into the final 2 weeks of the race. So I want to show that video really quickly. Let's take a look.
This year, there's a lot at stake. Here at home, I need you to vote for conservative David Jenkins.
Brian Kemp proudly endorses conservative David Jenkins for State House.
David Jenkins is a former police officer and a combat veteran. He'll stand up to radical Democrats in Atlanta. Take it from me, David Jenkins will defend our values and help us grow good Georgia jobs.
Vote conservative David Jenkins for State House.
So many of those in the media will say that it's a toss-up state, but Governor Brian Kemp is evidently popular enough to issue an endorsement there. Do you see the state turning more purple, or does Kemp's victory from 2018 suggest that the state still does align with conservative values?
Well, Alex, here's the deal. Governor Kemp is a wildly popular governor. And so if he's going to come out here and he's going to help get our Republicans across the finish line, we're certainly going to take those endorsements. But the reality of it is that Georgia, it's not so much that it's a purple state. Quite frankly, it's the amount of money that's being dumped into the state. And we've seen it in past cycles, and it's, thricefold this time around because Democrats feel strongly that they can make some headwinds in a state like Georgia. And again, we're seeing it across the nation. Georgia is just one example of where these left-leaning groups are coming in. They're dumping millions of dollars last minute, trying to see, quite frankly, what's going to stick. And so when you use that much money to try to buy elections, quite frankly, something will end up sticking, and we're not willing to take that chance. And so we're going to fight like hell to make sure that we keep our majorities.
And I think that's very well put because, for example, the whole reason that we're still talking about Stacey Abrams is because of those types of efforts. That's exactly what she's been doing, is trying to not only register voters in the state, but fundraise for the different candidates, bring outside money into the state of Georgia. I think that definitely plays a factor when we're talking about the state of Georgia. But if we move just slightly upward in the state of North Carolina, we see the campaign ads touching on local, but also national issues. So I want to play this latest spot that takes aim at the Democratic Lieutenant Governor and then talk about the details of this strategy. Here it is.
Meet Yvonne Lewis-Hawley. Her record? Everything wrong with Raleigh. Hawley supports higher taxes while also giving taxpayer-funded benefits to illegal immigrants. All of that while voting against a pay raise for our teachers. But Yvonne Lewis-Hawley didn't stop there. She even wrote a law that could eliminate your private health insurance in the middle of a pandemic. After 20 years in politics, Yvonne Lewis-Hawley's record is everything that's wrong with Raleigh.
So we do see the best of both worlds, if you will there, a national issue and then also a state issue. Are you seeing that national issues are playing more of a role in local races, or do you think that at the end of the day, the more effective lines are related to the issues that are closer to the voter geographically?
I think we've been very adamant about, you have to have the right representation, whether it's for your district or for your state. And I think a state like North Carolina, like many states in the country, they've been hit really hard by COVID-19, by the economy, a lot of things as they relate, quite frankly, to the pandemic. And so our goal has been to really emphasize during these times what candidate, what party is going to help you get by. And it's certainly not Democratic policies where they want to keep everything shut down. They don't want to get things back to normal. And so our whole point in an ad like that and in everything that we've been trying to do for the last couple of months is really emphasize who are the policymakers that are going to help make your life better at a time where everything is upside down and we're just trying to get back to normal.
That's a really interesting perspective because, of course, I mean, that does affect people based on where they are geographically. Every single state is dealing with the coronavirus pandemic differently. But at the end of the day, there are the underlying values that are essentially the same. I mean, I remember when North Carolina was being considered to have the RNC there. I mean, the whole decision by that local governor perhaps side-railed that entire project. But it goes by state, as you were just saying. And I know that the RSLC recently highlighted in an interview with Florida's lieutenant governor who explained how Joe Biden is struggling with Latino voters in that state. I want to play her comments really quickly. Let's take a look.
First of all, you have a president that has delivered, has kept his promises, and has really authored a great chapter in terms of Latino unemployment, record low, home ownership on the rise. And yet you contrast that with Joe Biden and really his lack of campaigning in Florida, his inability to understand that Latinos care about faith, they care about family, and they care about freedom. And Joe Biden doesn't stand for any of those things.
So when it comes to these different states or different counties, different towns, however narrow you do get in your decision-making process, what sort of information goes into that decision-making process? Are you sharing polls with the RNC and the Trump campaign? Is it based on demographics or how close a certain race is? What information takes priority?
So we work very closely with our state partners, whether that's different committees in the state, whether it's the caucuses themselves. And at the end of the day, we drive a data-driven organization. We are going to invest not only to keep our incumbents in the seats that they have, but we're also going to try to find opportunities to pick up those seats. And so a good example of that was early on this cycle, we established kind of this pathway to 115. And it's in 12 of our priority redistricting states. We identified 115 districts where currently Democrats hold a seat, but Trump won it in 2016. That creates an excellent pathway for us. And on the inverse, there are only 50 seats in those districts where Democrats currently hold the inverse, where Republicans currently sit that Hillary Clinton won. So right off the bat, we knew we had a higher ceiling in a sense. And so we've focused a lot of our attention on that. But at the end of the day, we're running winning campaigns, and we're going to go where the data tells us we can win, whether that's through polling, whether that's through the right candidate with the right message. We're going to invest in these individuals, and that's what's going to get us across the line come November.
It's fascinating. And Edith, before I let you go, too, I remember right after President Barack Obama was leaving the White House, there were some concerns within the Democratic side of the ticket that he didn't necessarily do enough to match that data-driven approach that you're talking about. I know that he can only do so much as president, but I think a lot of Democrats were saying that he didn't do enough to prepare for what comes after a figure that was as popular as he was, acknowledging the fact that the Democratic Party is a little bit fractured. Do you think Republicans still have that edge when it comes to that data?
Absolutely. In 2016, we like to say shortly after, Hillary Clinton was probably our best ally in selling our data in a sense, because she went up on stage and said, the RNC had a data program unmatched. She was given, bubble sheets and spreadsheets to go knock on doors and make phone calls. And the Republican Party has only doubled down on their data investment. So I feel very confident that when we look at numbers, when we create these pathways and when we make these decisions on where we're going to spend, we're doing it in a fashion much better than the Democrats are.
I mean, it's a fascinating conversation to have because I don't think people understand the importance of when you get down the ticket a little bit. We like to talk about what's at the top right there, but I mean, there's so much that really affects people's lives more so than the presidential race. And I commend you for what you're doing on the ground because it's very important work. Edith, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Have a good one.